Alright, so I'm putting the game on pause here just because there's a bit of like light information dump, or at least I'll try and make it as light as possible. To explain why I picked Puttmaster, Mo asked me yesterday after the stream, after the tournament, yo, why Puttmaster? And at the time I didn't have like a good, concise reason, and I wanted to like reflect a bit on that. So the good, concise reason is just a list of reasons why I think he's like a really, really good pick. I'll try and go through those, but the gist of it is that he's the most balanced character. Like he's the most well-rounded character to benefits in the game. So, also I think he's the best at like approach shots in general. He's the most flexible. So I want to go over shot restrictions in game. Shot restrictions is a thing that will like nudge your character into making a decision. Well, nudge you as a player into making a decision or not, based on what you have to deal with in the shot. And I feel that characters have different abilities to go around that. They're kind of represented a little bit in the stat system, but we'll try and expand upon that. So the shot restrictions are total distance. That includes like the distance of the hole, the distance of your character. Carry distance. This is specifically the distance at which your ball bounces on the floor for the first time. So if your character goes like 300 yards on their drive, maybe your carry distance is 250 yards. This is important because if there's water or a sand bunker, a sand pit at 250 yards, then you need to know your carry distance. That means that certain characters who have like a very high lob shot, like Technician, they're just like almost their carry distance is much closer to their total distance. So that's carry distance. Other one is whether or not your ball is rolling or bouncing. That's going to be affected by how high you shoot. It's not quite the carry distance, but it tends to play along nicely with carry distance. Other one is obstacles and final ball location. So that could be trees in front of you, bunkers, a body of water. Maybe the cup is on top of a bubble hill on the green. And finally, anything that could make your ball swing one way or the other. So that could be wind or grain. These are overall the shot restrictions that exist in the game. So if you want some examples of those, like that could be getting an eagle on par 5 is 100% deterministic on your maximum distance. Certain characters drive less, like shorter distances. They can't make those eagles, or they're like less reliable. So that's 100% going to be total distance. The length of your approach shot is going to be defined by total distance. If your drive is longer, then chances are that your approach shot on a par 4 or par 5 is going to be a shorter club. It's going to be like your wedges or something like that. Clearing obstacles is distance specific. Getting over or around trees, that forces your shot into a certain position or certain height. There's decisions such as, can your next shot start from the fairway? Certain characters, they don't mind. Certain characters, it's absolutely important, which will force your shot into a certain way. A hard wind can force the ball, right? If you normally have a straight shot over a tree, but the wind is preventing you from doing that because it's like shooting high is going to prevent you from gaining the distance, you have to like find different shots. And then you have like the mecca of restricted shots where everything just combines. You have like strong wind, a bounce on the rock, and not going over the green, because if you bounce on the rock at max power, you actually go out of bounds. And it's like, okay, for that you need the perfect like carry distance. There's trees in the way, so you need to go high. Then there's wind, so you need to be able to read that. And it's like a very narrow shot. So generally, when you play the game, you don't want to be confined to those restricted shots because they're so hard. You want to have like as much freedom as possible, and characters have different adjustment possibles based on their stats. So One of them is going to be your max drive distance. We talked about that one for total distance. Another one is going to be max iron distance. That's important because, unlike wood clubs, iron allow you to backspin. And we'll come back to that later. It's very important. But not everybody has an iron that's an iron upper boundary that's as flexible. Like, I believe Shotmaker has one at 230, Young Hero has one at 220, Puttmaster at 210. I believe Technician has one at 210, but I'm not even sure. So that's one thing. High-low bound, I think that's going to be highlighted by the skill bar here. This is just how high your character can shoot the ball and how low it can go. Puttmaster in this case is second in the game, next to Technician. And the other two characters that are really good, Shotmaker and Power Golfer, I believe are last or second last. Maybe Veteran is close to them. Then there's the power meter speed. That, I believe, is the accuracy stat. 1 for 1. This one's going to be a bit of a preference, but if you have an arrow shot to make for one reason or another, a good speed is going to be more favorable. So if your speed is like Power Golfer speed, then it's hard to make a very precise shot. If your speed is Shotmaker, then technically you could make like the shot you want whenever you want because it's that slow. I personally prefer a faster speed myself, but it could be a downside for someone that doesn't like that playing Puttmaster. Next up is club choices. The game's going to put you sometimes, or you're going to put yourself at certain ranges in game, and you might be forced to go up or down a club based on that, or to shoot below 100%. And I feel that's very relevant for certain distances where you have to make awkward shots because of that. So what I'm talking about is kind of like the lowest club possible on Landalt is 100 yard, and the next one up is 130, and the next one after that is 150. So there's like always a 30 to 20 yards gap. While if you pick someone like Technician, you have 100 yard, you have 110, 120, 130, which means you have like a very, very stable 10 yard increase with every club. So on that front, Puttmaster is like pretty interesting. He has two 20-yard skips in the irons, which is 100, 120, and 140. So sometimes you have an awkward shot in between 120 and 140, but generally speaking, you can stay above 100% power. Then there's slice available. I believe that might also be related to skill. I'm not sure, but either your character has two slices deep available, 3 or 4. In the case of Puttmaster, he has 3, which is sometimes relevant, but it's an extra stat that you can have to just make certain shots, go around certain obstacles. Oh, okay. So it's just unrelated. Yeah, I thought it was related, but you know, it's not like I have like hard data on how that works. Next one is recovery potential. You're going to make mistakes into your games. That's just normal. So if you're going to make mistakes, your character may be very unforgiving of that. You could be landing in the fairway, you could be landing in a bunker, and sometimes it's very hard to recover. Having a good recovery helps. Puttmaster is like 4th, I believe, in line for recovery, so it's definitely manageable. It's definitely better than Shotmaker or I think Power Golfer, but overall it can help, is the point. It's not also a stat that you kind of need too much of, because characters that have too much recovery sacrifice in everything else. So like Veteran has the best recovery, but he has like piss poor drive, piss poor everything else. So that kind of sucks about it. Next one is wiggle room between your 100% power and max power. I'll showcase that one in game, but basically you have notches that are like invisible on the power meter. If you shoot at 100%, you'll get 100% power. If you shoot at 99%, you'll actually lose like 3 to 5% or something. It depends on the club, but I think it's like a 3 to 4 yard gap, which is always hard to account for, because if you don't hit that 100%, you're just like 1 below. But if you hit 101%, you'll quite literally be 1 yard over. So having that wiggle room is actually very helpful because it's very predictable. Not only that, it's also easier to align your shot because you're within clear visual cues. You have the 100% power, and then you have the max power. So you're kind of like always wanting to play around those because you don't have to calculate your distances or anything like that. So aiming somewhere in between those two, I find it's very easy to build a reference versus, oh, I need to shoot this at 78% power. It's just hard to build a reference. So not only is it more predictable because you have notches at like 99% and max power. Oh, I didn't say that. Yeah, max power. For instance, my drive on Puttmaster at max power goes to 300. If I shoot at 100%, it's 260. But if I shoot at like in between 260 and max power, I get like 277. So my next jump is like a 20-yard jump for getting max power. Sometimes that's relevant and it's important, but it's just not having that wiggle room means you only have 100% to that 20-yard leap. You don't have that in between. Next one, ease of max power. This is how easy it is to get max power on command because it has such a leap. Puttmaster isn't the easiest in that regard. But it's manageable, and if you manage to get it, you have the same drive as Shotmaker, same drive as Landau. So overall, he has like one of the most flexible packages. I'll go over character comparisons after that. The last thing is putting notches. Putting notches are the most straightforward one. If you have less options on your putt. Putts are pretty unforgiving, and sometimes they only give you one way to do the putt. Having more power notches lets you at least try and select what version of the putt you can read better. So yeah, I like characters that are pretty flexible in that regard. So when I look at like Shotmaker, you don't have that wiggle room between 100% and max, so you're kind of always making adjustments in like 5% distance increments. And I prefer a character that can do those like micro 1% to 2% adjustment in power. It's also one of the reasons why I wouldn't really play Power Golfer, because he's like, you either club up 20 yards and power speed is so fast that it's very hard to get that 1% adjustment. So you're like, you can get used to it, but I feel those characters put you in boxes when it comes to making shot. You don't have like 15 different ways of making the shot. With Puttmaster, you can adjust that so much. If you shoot high, your ball loses distance, but you can shoot higher, so you can get more wiggle room that way. Because of backspin, you can always overshoot it and then adjust later. Like, you're never stuck making a shot that feels like the game wants you to do it, unless the restrictions on the shot are like too high. AKA, you have a 15 wind, there's a tree, there's a bunker, something like that. Now there are other characters that are just as like well-rounded as Puttmaster, and why don't I go for them? I've tried Young Hero before. He's actually fine. He's actually really, really fine, but he loses a bit on the putting. He loses a bit on max distance. His max drive is 285. So I've played him. He's perfectly fine, but I prefer Puttmaster just because he goes a little bit higher, and that 300-yard possible drive is sometimes relevant for some eagles. So I'm willing to make the sacrifices that he has versus Young Hero. Oh, and plus he has the better putting stat, better putting notches. So there's that. With Technician, I would probably like Technician a lot, just because you can adjust shots so easily with the height and all of that. Like, it's very easy to club up 10 yards or something like that. The problem is you have a short drive, meaning you can't get into your comfortable approach shot with him. You're much more frequently at your upper bound of irons, and that's where your backspin is kind of different, or you're kind of forced to do shots a certain way. Plus, he shoots so high that making wind reads with him is actually harder. Not that you have to shoot high, but then what's the point of playing technician if you're not like using the whole leverage? But when the game throws you a curveball, you can't use the whole leverage. So hopefully that explains why I go for Puttmaster. And we can probably start playing. On pause. Alright, we're gonna go in Japan because Japan has a lot of things that would help me feature what's happening with this character. Alright, next up. We're gonna talk about the most important aspect of the game today. It's the approach shot. No matter what anybody says, the approach shot is the best part of your game at all times. Simple reason. If you get an approach shot right, either you get a chip in, or you remove one decision from your game, which is putting. If you're so close to the green, or to the cup, or you have such a safe putt that it's basically shooting in a straight line, you have one less decision to take. And this is super important both in score play and in match play. In score play, this is going to increase your consistency. In match play, this is going to make your opponent shit their pants. If you come up so close to getting chip-ins against someone, they're just actually going to... They're just like... They'll lose their shit. The reason why I say this is because you don't shoot as hard as Landalt or Fernando, you get to do the approach shot first usually. And because you get to do the approach shot first, you're always putting your opponent in the position of following your shot. And if your shot is nice, and they have a not easy shot, or they have a win shot, or anything like that, and they see that you don't have to make a decision for the putt, it actually puts more pressure on them. I don't know how much that is relevant, but just the fact alone that on your game it removes one decision from your part of the game plan is desirable. Because in match play I want to shoot second, I'll actually tend to prefer underclubbing or not going max power on the drive, which means I'll usually go something like 260 and then just go there. It depends on the hole, obviously, but anywhere between like 140 yards to 180 yards, I'm very comfortable as like my most desirable approach shot ever. Because at each of those ranges, you'll see I have like, oops, wrong one. You can check at the club at the bottom. Anytime I make an adjustment, it's always a 10-yard adjustment. Anywhere from 140 to like 210. 10 yards is pretty important. We'll come back probably to that later, but anywhere there is just super interesting. Alright. So, first hole, there's not much to say. The only thing that I've done here is not went max or not went too much under. That way I'm not like on 100, under 140 yards. Being 140 yards, you kind of have to make that leap between 140 and 120. And the reason why that's relevant is, again, if you look at my power meter over there, I would much prefer being at 100% than going anywhere under. If I go at 99% with this club, I'm going to shoot at like 165. That's a 5-yard range that this club does not allow me to play. So what I would do instead, if I was at 170, if I was at like 165, I would just like club down and shoot in between 100 and max power, and there I would be able to interact with 165. But I don't want to do it from this club because if it's 167, I can't really interact with it. So here, bit of wind. I'll talk about my wind adjustments when I have a more relevant wind. For now, I'm just going to aim it and shoot it. One thing I'll notice, I noticed with my character, is if I go up the clubs, shooting 100% doesn't equate 100% if I bounce on the green. So in this case, if I shoot 100%, it'll actually put me at like 171. So I just barely want to shoot over 100%. Here, I didn't yet choose how high or low I wanted to shoot. I shot my power, and then based on my power, now I'm going to make the full decision. Because I'm at like 172, I'll actually go low so that it gives me an extra bit of distance. I could have went just a tad lower on that, and I would have probably either tinked it or chipped it in. Another reason why I like to shoot between 140 and 180, it wasn't relevant on this hole, is your ball tends to be less affected by wind when you have a club that's that high. If you use a wood, for instance, it shoots so low that the wind actually affects you less. So if there is strong wind, you have more wiggle room to not make like crazy adjustments. Like if you're at 100 yard and you have 15 wind, it's going to go backwards or whatever. On this hole, I have a small adjustment that is pretty interesting. You could go in between here pretty safely, like you can see in the render. Oops. You can see in the render kind of like where I'm looking at. Hold up. Right there, right? I can kind of just like slice my arrows to point at it, and I know that's like the corridor in between the fairway and the bunker. But I don't actually want to do that. I kind of want to go here instead, where I can graze the other bunker. Why do I do that? I don't want to take risk on a route if the wind is going to change me. Is going to change my shot. If this was like 4 wind, this corridor is so narrow, I don't want to risk it. So instead of doing that, I will consistently go for a strat that would work if the wind was favorable, if I can. Of course, if there's like wind helping you in the case, or like giving you a better shot at an eagle, go for it. But in this case, I want to go there. Not only that, I'm going to make an extra adjustment. If I shoot my max power where I'm aiming right now, I'm actually going to end right about there. That's like in the heavy rough, not the heavy rough, but the rough, which gives me like less favorable shot. I could still make it on the green, but I'm in the rough. If I go too far, I'll actually go in the water. So I want to shoot as hard as I can here, but if I shoot too hard, it'll actually go too close to the rough, and I don't want that. So I take a non-risk of just realigning my ball. By doing that, I am almost going the same place, but the end of my trajectory will actually like just graze along this thing. So if this would have went like max power, I would have ended in the water like right there, for sure. These types of small adjustments, they don't really cost you anything, but it's the difference in between me having to shoot that shot at 180 yards versus, or 190 versus 157. This is a preference that's going to be based on you and your character. I prefer a 157 shot over a 190 shot. Just because, again, on the power indicator, these percentages also scale with your club. So at 157, if I go 1% over, it's 1 to 2 yards. At 190, if I go 1 to 2% over, it's probably 2 to 3 yards. Which is, again, harder if I want that small precision. Here, no wind, not much to say, but it does let me talk about another concept that I want to introduce towards the rest of this run, which is going to be units. Units and references. In NeoTurf Masters, there's going to be shots where you have to do like math and conversions to know distance and where you're going and how the wind is going to affect you. Fuck all of that, right? We can't do maths, we're bored, we're playing golf, we don't care. What I do instead is I create references that like let me predict more or less where I'm going. These are just like, they could be anything, right? A reference could be a unit of how to convert wind. It could be a map reference, aka aim at this 3. It could be rough and sand conversions, which is just like add 30 yards. It could be putting units. I'll come back to that if it's relevant later. But for this one, the unit is just forward spin. On any forward spin, I found it you add about 70 yards. 7 yards, predictably. I'm at 150. The shot is at 157. I'll just try and go 100% and make it forward spin. Now when I'm aiming here, you'll notice that I'm actually aiming slightly right of the pin. That's because the render is a little messed up, and I find that if you can aim yourself slightly on the right, you'll actually be aimed on the cup and the pin more often. That might go in. Close enough. So, with this reference, it's pretty simple. If you see a shot that's like 7 yards over a distance that you know you can hit, just you don't have to do the math. You're just like, oh, 7 yards, that's my forward spin thing. Oh, I can do the forward spin here. I don't have to do the math. It's 100% shot plus 7. Yes, there's math, but it's not as big. Here we have another unit that we have to contend with, which is how much yards you gain or lose when you're shooting from up a hill or down a hill. It's roughly 3, something like that. So there's not going to be much of an adjustment here. What else is there? I am probably going to bounce on some heavy rough or the green. But because there's a card path in the heavy rough, I think I prefer the bounce on the green. Because it's more predictable. It's either I get a small bounce, or it's either I get a like big bounce based on the card path, while if I just bounce on the green, I get like a very, very small bounce regardless because I'm going to backspin. This is one thing that's important about approaches shot, is you can actually make your carry distance and your total distance closer to one another because of the backspin. This is actually a lesson that I learned from real life golf. My coach said, I prefer balls that don't roll, because when you shoot them, they end exactly at the distance that you shoot at. And that's more predictable. I didn't know when I took those classes that this golf advice would actually help me in Neo Turf Masters, but here we are, right? So, I could make the equations for like rough bounces and something like that. I'm just not going to make it. I'm going to assume I'm going to bounce on the green, and that's going to be that. So to do that, I'm going to overshoot it, backspin it a little bit. Is there anything else that I want to say here? Technically, the cup is at the bottom of the hill on the green, so I can kind of assume my backspin will catch the hill and actually roll back. We'll see. Putting a lot of backspins here. See, I actually even caught the rough. I would have bounced a little bit more there if I bounced on the green, but I would have needed to go 200 yards. But because I was uphill, didn't want to lower it too much. Yeah. But I've talked about like backspin for... I've talked about like units and references to avoid like long calculations. Unfortunately for backspin, I don't know what units precisely is like consistent across the cast. Backspin is affected by how high you go, and if you go higher, the backspin is stronger. So the clubs that you have at a higher power, they go further horizontally and they go lower. So the backspin is always going to be much less noticeable. The only thing I can say is if you want to learn how to backspin, start at like your mid-range comfortable shot. For me, that's like 170 yard, and just adjust from there. If 170 yard is like consistently 5 to 10 yards of backspin, then once you go up the clubs, it'll consistently be 3 to 5 yards of backspin. Once you consistently go down, it'll be like 10 to 15 yards of backspin. Here, I am going to make my most desirable shot for this green. Not just this pin position, but for this green in general. We have trees that are in front of us, and I could either risk it by shooting max power. However, I don't always trust my max power on this character, so it's preferable to do shots that don't rely on it. So what I do instead here is I go around there. There's a small pocket there that you have like no obstruction from the trees. You're actually pretty far. Sometimes I'll take that shot and like land at 150 yards away from the green and still be able to shoot over the trees. Not only that, it gives you pretty good vision over the rest of the green, and it's generally safe. I even have a bit of wind here to help me make it even safer. I also want to talk about a visual that I use for this. You'll see this rock here. When I use my slice arrow, it's actually pointing towards the right side of the rock. Now, because of the wind, I know I can actually put it a little further, but my starting reference points for this shot is aiming at this rock right there with a one slice or one hook, and I know that puts me on the right spot. Next thing is just shoot at 100%. Give and take. Normally, because there's no wind, I am much closer to the tip of the peninsula there, but either way, if the pin was there, I could shoot. That tree is not in the way. If the pin was there, I could shoot no problem, but it's here, so I'm going to have it to do it there. Now, this shot, no wind, cool. I'm about aligned now, I think. Yeah, I think I'm aligned now. Okay, we have two choices for this shot, in my opinion. Two starting choices. Either we stay on 140, or we go down 120. I've talked about the 7-yard forward spin. This would be a good way to do it. I only need to shoot at 124 yard and then forward spin. Yeah, that works. Problem, there is a bubble on the green in front of that cup. Meaning I can't guarantee that I'll know where it rolls. It'll give me a very safe putt, but I want it to go in. So I'm actually going to go above here, because from 120, I don't have a good shot at 131. Only with forward spin, and unless I completely bounce over the hill, which I don't suspect I'll do, it won't work. Problem is, 140 yard, your club starts to be really, really high. Getting a reliable backspin from a 10-yard distance is hard, but again, I like playing better within the 100% range. If I go under, it's harder to have a visual for like 90%, but I know I need to get past roughly 100%, and all my other shots need to get past roughly 100%. So I'm practiced into doing that zone. The only downside to that is that you need to learn very dangerous backspins position. In this case, it's not risky, right? But you just need to like master them. Didn't want to hit the pin there, but oh well. I should have talked about putting units. Damn it! Damn it! We'll get back to one. Someone remind me to talk about putting, even though we're talking about the approach shot today.
Player 1 jumped over 5 places in this hole.
Hole number 5.
The longest drive contest. Good luck. Player 1, shot.
Okay, first eagle of the run. In most cases, this character gets about 277 distance if you don't hit max. You get 300 if you hit max. Your eagles with this character is Yeah, no, don't worry. I plan on uploading it to YouTube. Your eagles with this character are very dependent on you hitting max power. I have a little personal trick on how to make it a little bit more reliable. It's shaky, and I can't really demo it. What I do is I watch a full cycle of the shot power completely, right? I watch the whole thing at least once, maybe twice if I need to be confident about it. And when it hits the specific point that I want to hit, I kind of nod my head and my body, almost as if I was like pressing a button with my forehead, right? I try to like absorb the timing that way. Maybe it's stupid, I don't know. That's what I do, and I find that when I take the time to do it, it generally helps. So like, I nod. I nod. I nod. Didn't get it. Luckily for this hole, as long as I get it close enough to max, the follow-up shot is possible. There was a small adjustment that I make on the first alignment, just because I know I can hit the rough at max power here, so you have to place yourself in a good way, but those you make over time overall. Here, we're on top of a hill. Yeah, I saw you do the club down, clubbing up again. I like it. I think the power meter for Puttmaster for full rotation is kind of slow enough that I don't know if I would like that rhythm. With like Power Golfer, if you change club, it kind of just goes like change club, hit the power. It has a rhythm, but I don't know that I find the rhythm with this this setup. When you're on eagles, you don't really want to do the approach shot that I was discussing earlier. You kind of just want to get on the green. It's better to have a difficult putt for an eagle than like getting a super good approach shot. Unless obviously it risks going out of bounds or like in a bunker. In this case, worst case scenario, I land anywhere on top of the hill, anywhere below, or farther down on the green, not a problem. I even have wind to help me here. Normally I would club up, but with the wind it should be good. I hope. Yeah. Normally I need to go about like 10 yards out. This is an example of like how your carry distance actually matters a whole lot. If you had a carry distance that made your ball like land super vertically, this hill wouldn't be a problem. But you don't have that all the time, and when you do shots from too far, your carry distance is like much less forgiving. So here it's not too bad. I have a rough shot. Rough shot at these distances I kind of just eyeball. In this case I'm just gonna go over and backspin. Even then it wasn't enough. Doesn't matter too much. If the green had a different configuration, I would probably mind, but in this case, I don't. Woo! That was close! Woo.
I did it!
Yeah, that one wasn't... It's gonna happen when I have like a perpendicular putt.
This is Nancy's report.
Hole number 6, 296 yards.
This hole, I'm also going to not attempt to get a decent approach shot. Well, I was gonna say that, but now we have 8 wind. Normally what I do is, let me put myself right there. No, it's not that one. I use the map indicator as a reference on this one. Your power, your aiming reticle kind of moves like in notches. It doesn't move completely fluidly. Like, see, I'm tapping left here, or right, and it doesn't completely move. I find that that's a pretty good spot to create reference points, because you can actually see it enter another range. In this case, I want it to be at this range. If I just go there, it's not good. If I just go there, it's good. then I slice right. There's like this small corridor that if I had no wind, I could go max power and it would bounce on the green. If I failed to max power, I just land in front of the green with no trees in front of me, in the rough or heavy rough, at a sub 50 yard shot. Okay, there's no penalty for doing that. I don't care if I have a good approach shot or not. However, if there's 8 wind in my face, 1, I can't make the distance, and 2, then I risk going out of bound. This corridor is narrow enough that I can't do it with with high wind, so I'll just avoid this strategy altogether. Instead, I will put myself at the most desirable position. It could be that the position is right where this cursor is. No, I don't like that, because I try and also predict where the wind is going to be on the next shot. It's never completely accurate, but the game is not going to throw you 15 of wind and then just say, oh yeah, nothing on the next shot by the way. Like, just all clear. It might happen if the wind is already low, but if the wind is at 8, you can probably assume that there's going to be like at least 2 to 6 wind, if not more, on the next shot. So instead, I want to shoot at a distance that's going to be like much less impervious to wind. I'll actually shoot like right there. It's a bit safer. My first shot itself is going to be like adjusted for that, and I can even make it super safe by like clubbing up and just like lowering my power a little bit. That way my ball goes less high and is not affected by wind. There, nice and easy. This one is actually going to let me talk about wind units now. Yay, wind units. This is an important one. How do you read wind in general? Well, what I do is I convert a specific number of wind to a distance or something like that. That way I'm only creating a reference to make easy math faster later. My reference is that 4 wind is 1 unit of wind. 1 unit of wind, if it's in my face like it is right now, is going to account for about 10 yards. So now this wind is at 8, I am going to lose 20 yards. I club up twice, that's it. That's the math, I've made it. It's that simple. Of course, it's not quite that simple. If you have lower clubs, like if you were shooting at 100, going 2 clubs up might not be enough. Or going 20 yards up might not be enough, you know? Here I'm at 150. I actually trust I need to go higher, so I'll probably go a bit higher, especially since the distance is 154, and right in front of the green is a patch of heavy rough. So, there you go. I have my shot. The only thing that I need to know now is how much the ball is going to move left to right. Great, I have another unit for that. It's still 4 wind. 4 wind sideways is about equivalent to 1 arrow here, or 1 arrow there. Here it's at an angle, so now I have to do like, oh, okay, it's, oh, look at that, it's about 25% to maybe less of the way there, so I can probably just say it's 1 arrow, and that's it. I'm going to guess that it's going to be a bit less than 1 arrow, but I'll be making this shot about there. Here I go a little bit harder, just because I want to put backspin. I don't want it to go too high though, because it's going to bring the ball back. Whew! I was afraid it would go down the hill. See, this putt, if I had gone down the hill, wouldn't have been too bad, but turned out pretty good. I don't have to make a decision on this putt. I just have to put it in. And that's it. References and units will, like, change your game. I don't have a reference sheet for every character, but you can build those yourself. You can either look at the map, you can either look at, like, your power differences. You can use the arrow for wind predictions, since it's a very good visual. You want to take things that are, like, anchored in the game and are not going to change. Those are great reference points, and they create, like, quick shortcuts to make fast decision thinking whenever the game throws you just a hard shot, a 15 win or something like that. 15 win? Alright, that's 3.5 win units. Cool. I club up 3 to 4 times. Cool, I got it. Here, this hole is a bit unfortunate because the only comfortable distance for the drive is not a comfortable distance for the rest of the shot. So, kind of have to go low, but even if I go low, it's like not favorable at all after that. Like, I hit that low 140, 150, and the wind is pretty strong, so... oh, wind got good. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. So, perfect exercise for our wind units. We're at 150. We have 2 wind to the left. That's 0.5 units, meaning it is half of this arrow. Now, I don't know if you can see it, right? But ideally I'd have lines for this. Let me try and see if I can move this. Not this one. This one. Alright. Let's try and put it where the arrow is. Yeah, there's like the tip of the hand there. That's one line. That's kind of where the ball is going to be. And then there's that line, which is like where the arrow is. If I can put the pin in between that, because it's only half of an arrow, I got the right distance. About there. Now, there's going to be something else that's going to happen here. 146 is kind of like in between 150 and 140. Alright, if I go 140, I could put forward spin, right? It's on top of a hill, so it'll even lose some distance. Problem is, in front of the green there's a patch of heavy rough. So I can't carry it there. I need to actually overshoot it. But I still want to get close to 146, so I'll put some backspin. However, backspin at 150 is a little deep, and I don't want it to roll back down the hill, so I'll try and overshoot it a little bit, and then put like very light backspin. To put light backspin, I have to go lower. My reference for this wind is at nice, so I'm actually going to set my thing at the reference for nice, and then I'll tap a couple bit, just because I know I'll be going lower. And then I can make the shot. I think I've actually shot it a little stronger than I needed to, but because I've made the adjustment on the wind, I'll probably want to go low still. And if I go low, chances are I'll stay on top of the hill, meaning my putt decision will be easier. Oh, actually, it was at the bottom of the hill. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, never mind. A 160 shot would have been good here. Would have been better. Oh, I can move that. We don't have really putt units to talk about here. The green is kind of just like helping us in one way or another. It's just like, I guess you could say, grain that is going in the same direction as your putt kind of counts as 1 unit of power in the case of Puttmaster. So if you have grain that is pushing you up a hill, you probably don't need to overshoot it. If you have grain pushing you down a hill, you probably can shoot 1 under. If you have a hill that is bringing you down, you can probably also remove 1 unit of power from your putt. If you have a hill going up, you probably want to add 1 unit. So that's for like the parallel units. We don't have sideways yet because we haven't seen that one, but this putt is on a bubble hill, meaning I'll be able to talk about putt units. Hell yeah. I don't think I'll be able to do this eagle because I have face wind and it's very restrictive. Again, my 2 shots at max power are 600. And even then here I have to take weird angles. And then there's a follow-up shot that's like along the river. Too risky, don't want to do it. Not even going to take the risk. For this hole, I want to place myself right in front of those trees right there on the left, right here. I want to place myself just a bit before that because I'll be able to shoot over them. If I'm not sure where to aim, I can kind of just like aim at the trees and follow the curve here. That way I know I'll stay like on the fairway. I'll go pretty low too, just because there is wind and I kind of want to avoid it. We'll see what the wind is for this shot. Woo! Jeez. Jeez. let's work our units. This wind, it's about 45 degrees to where we're shooting. The wind is always angled as the map is, not as where your character is aiming. So you want to make the read based on like this reticle here. If you could overlap this arrow with this, it would be great. That would be what would help you do this shot. Unfortunately, you can't, so you kind of have to like visualize it. But in this case, the wind is about 45 degree pushing us. So that's going to be 3 units of wind. 1, 2, 3. Close to. It's not quite pushing us there because it's not quite horizontal. And 1, 2, maybe 3. Not sure. I'll go 1 up because we're like at 166. No, actually. Oh, that works. I'll go a little bit there because the putt is on a bubble hill. And preferably with hills, what you want is be either down them or completely on top of them. Can't really be completely on top of a bubble hill, so you much prefer going down. And in fact, I think I will club down and put some forward spin. The reason why I put some forward spin is chances are your ball will stop on a hill if you make a high shot. If you put some forward spin, you will force your ball to interact with the hill because it has momentum, and then the hill's momentum will apply to the ball. That generally means your ball will like predictably roll down hills. Sometimes that can even give you information on how the hill slant is. So if you're not sure, under club, put some forward spin, and then you'll actually see the ball roll down the hill, indicating, like giving you a hint on the putt. It's great. Forward spin, locked in and go. And I would have been on the other side of the hill had it not been for that. Or I would have completely stopped on the hill. So instead, I only have one side of the hill to interact with. Briefly talked about putting units. I kind of eyeball hills as 1 unit and grain as 1 unit for sideways. If grain was completely sideways at the moment, I aim just outside of the cup, and it will always bring me back to the center. It's not quite there yet, but it's going to bring me like slightly to the right on the map. So I kind of need to angle it there. And the hill will also try to bring you to the bottom of where you're aiming. So if I'm aiming like right there, I'm aiming right there, draw a straight line to the bottom of the hill, and it's actually going to pull you there. So I have like 2 forces pulling me on the same side here. They're both like pulling me towards this side. The green not so much, but as soon as I start like doing that, it's kind of like sucking me a little bit over there. Yeah. It's not the most difficult putt to read here, but you can kind of see, like, you can kind of just add it as the number of forces pulling you in one direction. That's also how you can tell that a putt is, like, canceling each other with its momentum. In this case, they're both pulling me here, so I will both, like, if I was making the grain adjustment, I would go, it's about here. If I was making the hill adjustment, I would go, it's about here. Then you need to decide how the power is going to interact with that. Normally, I just go 1 over. That was good. Yeah, like if you have a parallel shot up the hill, man, you only need to read the power. And then it's an upward shot on the hill, so it's probably 1 unit. Alright, shoot 1 up, or 2, if you're not sure. Putting is very unforgiving, because unlike this whole approach shot that I'm discussing, it's usually all or nothing. If you're on a slanted hill, or anything like that, you have 1 way to make that putt. And it's either a straight line, either straight line but with lesser straight line but with less power, or then you completely read the hill and you go like normal power and it's going to curve along the hill perfectly. There's no like wiggle room. You can choose which one you prefer based on your read, but it's terrible. That's why putting is like the worst aspect, and that's why you can fix it with your approach shot. Alright, let's read this one. 4 wind, roughly in our face, slightly aiming us to the left, and uphill. We're uphill, so we're going to gain 3 to 4 yards, but we're going to lose like a lot. We're on the low club here, meaning the wind counts kind of like as 2 units. If I shoot up and high, I'm going to 80 yards for sure. So I will probably just club up, because at least it'll help, and I will probably overshoot it and or go low. The unit system is probably going to start failing you there when you start going into extremes, but at least it creates a reference that you can start working with, instead of like no reference points, I guess I'm going to shoot at 120 and then oops, you overshoot it, not on the green, not helping. It's pulling me a little bit to the left, and because we have clubs that shoot really high, it's probably going to count really close towards like a full unit. So I'll use like 75% of the unit roughly here, and just go low. Ideally on this shot, you land on top of the hill. If you didn't want to take a risk there, you could have landed like anywhere here. Would have been a straight line putt. Here I actually probably have to make an adjustment left or right, or read the hill, which is super steep here. So I kind of like shoot 2. If you're not sure on how to read a hill, suggestion, just overpower it. Overpower it and go in a straight line. The only risk that you need to do doing that is kind of just like, if you overpower it and it's not dead centered, it's going to lip out. And like it's going to catch the lip and just keep the momentum and swing out. You really need to be centered to overpower it. Yeah, but I think it's slightly pulling me there. The other thing when aiming, in this case I'm like pretty straight, so I won't change it. But the other thing that you need to keep in mind when aiming, if possible, keep the cup within your aim. If I'm actually aiming here, and the ball would end where the cup is at the right distance, it would go in the cup. If I go here and the ball ends, it's probably not in the cup. So if you're aiming, preferably aim whenever the cup is still within the ball's like straight line trajectory. Because if you overread the hill, at least you'll go, you'll still be on the hole on the correct side, right? Like if you're reading that the hill is going to pull you to the left here, even if it doesn't pull you that much to the left, you're still going in the cup. You get what I'm saying? For now, we're just gonna try and do this. Oh, another interesting one. Okay, you see how the power here is right there? This is pretty important in how you want to take the shot. I prefer taking shots coming in from a full bar, just because I can see it move, than coming in from the bottom of a bar. Because then I have to read like this bounce right here, right? If I'm coming from here, I have like all this room to watch it go along. This can vary, but generally speaking, you want to take it in the way that's like lets you the most anticipate where the bar is going to be if you play with a faster bar. The other thing is, you may want to consider whether or not you have a tendency to go over your mark or go under. In this case, I want to go over. But generally speaking, I know that I have a tendency to go over my mark. So if I'm coming from the right side and I hit, like I try to aim 1 over the power indicator, I have a chance to go 1 over. Because that's generally where I do. That's generally what I do. So it is probably more favorable for me to aim at 2, because if I make the mistake of going 1 over, that's still valid. There we go. And it did swing me to the left, by the way.
I did it!
Flies for birdie. Player 1.
Clean front 9. Clean front 9.
This is Nancy's report.
Yeah, when you have like I guess you could say like half pipe looking hill, it's so hard to tell if you're parallel to it. It's so hard.
Par 4.
Player 1. Shot.
Doo-doo-doo. Alright. There's a risk that could happen here. If I shoot with my 1 wood, 260, I'm gonna hit the bunker. For sure. There's a corridor right there. I could go in between there. There's wind that's pulling me sideways. I don't even want to risk it. The approach shot to the green has to go over these obstacles. And if you shoot from a rough, your carry distance is going to be worse. Your ball is going to roll. Meaning I would have to take like a slice around it to make it to the green. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's doable. It's not that hard a shot, but like, I don't need to do it. So instead of like having a 260 shot that lands me here, or at best maybe clears the bunker by going over power, I'll just down club 1 and go here. It doesn't cost me anything. The only thing that it really cost me, I believe, is I'll probably lose an ideal approach shot range. Like I'm a little far right now. That's okay. Alright, here. Close to 1 unit of wind. So just like the arrow getting past the reticle. Not the reticle, the pin. We have a bunker in front of us. I don't want to land into it, so I'm just going to over club 1 so that my bounce is very unlikely to be in the bunker. And preferably, I'm going to even shoot it harder because the cup is on top of a hill, and if I don't roll down the hill, I have an easier putt. So that should be pretty good. Ah! Ah!
On the green. Player 1. Birdie try.
Ah, this is a pretty good example of unit. Alright. Normally, this is close to perpendicular grain. I'm moving this much for perpendicular grain. I'm still within the cup. If I shoot 1 over by accident, that's still going to go in. If I shoot 1 under, that's probably still going to go in. But in this case, I also have the hill that's pulling me in the same direction as the grain, so it's kind of like 2 units. Grain is slightly giving me extra forward momentum, slightly, but I'm still gonna go like 1 over and about here just to be sure. Again, I didn't have to like make a blind read there. So 2 units pulling me in one direction, 2 adjustments pulling me in one direction. Generally speaking, the hills are stronger than the grain, but that depends. Yeah, because you have to shoot like... I'll show on the power reticle where you have to shoot with power golfer. Oh, I have a specific strat for this hole. Visual reference time. This bunker. Let's see what's happening here. I aim about right there, close to like 60% of the bunker. Right. I'll move the thing just a little bit, just so you can see. Close to 60% of the bunker. 2 hook, and I don't go max power because this distance here, I don't want to go in the water. We're just putting ourselves a clear shot for the next shot. Again, the next shot is the approach shot. Top priority, that's the one we want to have. If I shot in a straight line, I would end about right here. Predictably. I would avoid this very nicely. I would land there, no problem. Next problem, next shot, there's a tree over here. If I'm too close, I have a bad shot. And if somehow the pin is not lined up, it's harder to line up the shot. I don't know, man. I just have to take a shot over this. There's one more obstacle to deal with. So what I do, I just put a reference that dodges this whole rough, because if I want to land right there, my carry distance is actually in the rough. But if I do a hook, my carry distance is still at the same distance as the rough, but it's like in the fairway. So I land right here instead. And now there's no tree in front of me, and I can make a clear shot towards the green. Now, you can apply the wind system units here too. Like, technically there's one wind pulling me to the right. So I could make that micro adjustment. In this case it's minor, but if there was like 8 wind, you would do it. And again, not max power. Nowhere anything like that. I'm far enough from the water. That's fine. That's completely fine. Next up, this approach shot. Here is a cart path on the map. You can bounce on it, and it'll carry you over the following patch of heavy rough. That's over here. So if I did a max shot here, chances are I would probably land in the heavy rough, and then I wouldn't get on the green in 2. I'm still in a good position here, but it's not an eagle, and I want the eagle. I could go around it if I get a max shot, and then I would bounce in out of bounds and not heavy rough, which would be a good enough bounce to get onto the green. But I don't trust my max power shot, so I don't go for it. Instead, there's kind of like a visual reference that you can use with the reticle here, or with the pin, if it's in the current position that it is. And there's like a pretty lenient cart path here. It kind of follows this trajectory. Like, you can see the trees here, they kind of form a line. It kind of follows that. So, we will try to aim at that. First, adjust the position assuming there's no wind. Whenever I'm kind of like off the island here, if you can see the reticle at the top right, like it's kind of moving one unit off the island, or just barely aiming at the pin, I know I'm on the thing there. 2 wind, slightly pulling me to the right, so I'll just like make one nudge there. That's it. No need to go max power. If I go max power, there's a chance I go out of bounds. And that's it. Here's why... oh, I don't think I have to actually do it. Nice. Actually, I might be on that hill. There might be a pixel right there. That's on the hill. Maybe before, maybe after. I am not sure. Normally, what I'd say here is, if you're not sure if you're on a hill, play it as if you're on the hill. AKA, like, move into it. And make the read based on how you want to do it. In this case, I think with the grain it's slightly pulling me to the right, so I can probably just do this and undershot it, and then the grain will push me into the green. That's probably what I'm going to do. It's worth noting, I talked about hills being like one unit. It's worth noting that like this is one of the most variable units in the game. If I was making this shot, I am parallel to the hill for 30% of the putt, meaning it's going to affect me like crazy. It's going to send me out so hard. Probably not hard enough to go back to the green there, but to the cup. But it's going to send me out very hard. Versus if I had to make like this putt, I'm kind of going up the hill, so it's less. It's kind of like parallel with the hill. It's not affecting me. The other thing that you want to consider is things are going to affect you based on the power that you're putting at. If you putt really hard and you're parallel to a hill for like the first part of your power, like right there, right? If for this part of the putt you were parallel to a hill and your strength is here, ignore that hill. It's not going to affect you. You're going way too fast. But if you're parallel to the hill at the end here, now you have to like give it extra. So you can kind of like make better predictions there on hills, but they're not like unit based, which is why it doesn't work well with the rest of the concept. But yeah, in this case, I'm about there. Again, I kind of want to still aim in the cup. I know the grain is going to push me slightly towards the cup, and generally speaking, I can shoot 1 under. Because there's grain pushing me, I can shoot 2 under. I will try to shoot 2 under, and it will probably be enough to push me into the cup. Wow. Never mind. All of that because I was afraid of the hill.
I did it.
Reasonably afraid.
Rise for birdie. Player one stands third.
But again, I think I prefer making an assumption. I think I prefer making an assumption that I'm on the hill than just blindly saying, yeah, no, I'm not on that hill. At least you can make a better decision there, generally speaking. Here, not much to say. If I go max power with backwind like I have now, I'm kind of going into the bunker, so I'm not going to do that. It's also pretty far. I haven't tested strategies where like I could adjust here with slice. That way my angle towards that is better. If I don't hit max power, I'm pretty sure that might shoot me into the water. Or close to. So I don't really challenge that. Kind of just like aim there, not max power. Clean and easy. Ideally I'd get a max power here, but because there's wind, I don't want to risk it. Plus it's a pretty good pin position. Oh, we even have wind. Hell yeah. Okay. Units time. Backwind, so that's going to be one club down, probably. That's pushing me 10 units forward. In this case, it's 1.5, but I'll put backspin, so that'll hopefully cancel it out. Pushing me a bit to the left. I'd say about this much. Right? About like 75% of a unit. Something like that. However, I'm going to shoot a bit higher here, so it's probably going to move me a little bit more. No, I think that's fine. The reason why I want to shoot high is because I want to backspin it and get over that tree. Oh. Or just hit the tree and it stops me. This is a pretty cool strat on this hole. Just lose all your momentum into that tree. Pretty reliably. They're like really fat. One under is kind of whatever. The green's pushing me. So yeah, I mean, we'll finish this course and everything, but I feel like I've got a chance to talk about everything that goes into the approach mentality. Like, you're making shots that only care about the approach shot, super safe putts, yada yada. You don't make mats too hard. You're kind of just like, alright, normally I'd aim right there, on the right of the bunker. That's my visual reference. I had to work out the distance for this, but it's normally about this. I don't try to go in the middle there. I don't try to go to the left there. If there's wind, one, I wouldn't want a shot this close to the green with wind. And second, landing correctly there would be disastrous. I don't try and pass in between the two bodies of water because that requires a max shot, and if I miss it, I'm in heavy rough or in water or, I don't know, something bad. So I just go there. There's a few trees in front of me, but I know my character can clear that distance correctly. In this case, I still have to make an adjustment based on the wind, so I'll probably just like move it a little bit there. That's about 1 unit. Doesn't matter, in this case I kind of always just go low. There you go. Predictable 140 yard to 180 yard range, and then I know I can get over that and get to the green. In this case, the arrow looks like it's slightly pushing me to the right based on the reticle. They're like not completely parallel. So I'll just slightly go to the left here. 4 units, that's 10 yards. Normally you could do that and land at the correct distance, but it's also, there's like heavy rough in front of the green. Don't really want to risk it, so I'll just go there and just put some backspin on it. Damn. Backwind sucks.
Player one, third shot.
If you're at this distance, you could actually putt. I never like doing that. You lose the backspin that's available from your shot here, so even if at the bottom of the power range A 1-2% difference is like super hard to get. Because there's backspin, you can kind of self-correct and just think like that. Anyway, it's so unlikely that you chip it in here, but at least you could try and affect it some way. I went probably at 15. It's a bit high. There's almost like no drop-off distance. So I will shoot high because the backspin is slightly stronger. Slightly. Well, actually stop the thing completely. Wah, wah. I didn't say it was impossible. I didn't say it was impossible, but you have a few more options with your 100 yard than your putt, so just take the 100 yard. Plus, if you backspin, the ball can stop literally where you shoot it. Not too bad. Nice. This spin position actually lets us see the flag. And the other ones, you kind of have to make a blind shot, and I haven't worked up the time to like get references here or here to know based on pin positions, because there's more than one and it's hard to create. So you know, I don't bother. But now we have a clear indication of where it is, and we have units to work with. Yay! One unit is there. We have about 2.5. 2 units is roughly there. Could probably go a little bit further. It's gonna pull us back quite a bit. Quite a bit. So I think what I'll do is I'll stay at this club and instead get like a bit closer. I'll shoot lower, that way I'm just like less affected by distance drop off and horizontal wind. Yeah. Could have been a bit more to the left, but hey, I got a straight shot to the green. Not that I planned to get exactly that one. I think I was trying to aim at top of the hill, but this is about closest you get to a straight shot. Oh, and it's a steep hill. Yeah. Needed that to be one over. I mean, you try to go a bit over there, but if you shoot low, when the wind is like not completely in your face, drop off isn't too hard. So like, I think I went 185, shot low, and it slowed me down to 5 yards. So pretty flexible. Yeah. There's not much to say about this hole. You can't really go further because it's heavy rough or rough, and it's a good distance anyway from that bubble, so you just aim for the bubble, which means you don't go max power, it's a clean 100% shot, or a little bit more if there's no wind. Here there was like wind pushing me. Cup is in the middle of a hill on the green, meaning I will probably want to be down the hill or just on top of it, but because there's wind pushing me, I'll just follow along with the wind and go down the hill. I wanted to put forward spin just to make sure I roll down the hill, but I think I'm just going to shoot like low. When you shoot low, your ball doesn't tend to stop because it's not as vertical. It tends to roll. It tends to have like a lot more rolling potential. So if it bites into a hill, it's just going to get taken by the hill. Versus if you shoot high, even with wind, chances are your ball's not going to roll, and it could stop like in the middle of a hill, which could be bad. Feel it's still pushing me a bit to the left. Anyway, we're probably gonna roll down the hill. That's not too bad. Could have tried to put some backspin there to be slightly better angled, but it's not too bad. Here we have like a mini hill, but it's at the bottom of our putt. It's at the end of our putt, so it's going to affect it pretty highly. I'm going to aim Still within the cup. I'm just gonna go one over. Oop, that's not gonna get it. Yeah. This is what I mean by putts are unforgiving. It's either you go like 2 over and you aim straight at the cup, or you try to read it and you go at 1. It's very hard that you can have an in-between. Which is why the approach shot is the important part. Because if I got somehow closer to that cup, I wouldn't have had to make a difficult putt. Now, obviously, it's not everything. There's still going to be hard putts, but yeah, you'll have like less of those, and those can happen pretty frequently in match play too. Like, you're gonna have you and your opponent just having like supremely fucked putts because of wind, and you're both missing them. This hole. Here, I try to land on top of the hill. Even if I don't get max power, I usually get it. In this case, there's kind of like wind pushing me. So I think I'm fine. I'll just kind of go there. But I think I'm losing distance because of that. Doesn't matter. Hopefully that's not out of bound. I'll go high because I'll get like a softer bounce. In this case, I don't care about being in the rough. My approach strategy for this hole is to go, instead of going here, I go there. Why do I go there? Well, my character's recovery is good enough that it can shoot over that hill feasibly. And from here, it's a pretty predictable range that I'll be at. Yeah, pretty predictable, where I can reliably just say it's 40 yards of units because I'm in the rough. You need to have your conversions, but it's pretty predictable. If I go here, the problem is that the only iron that I have is a 210. If I want to carry over that, I need to shoot like close to max power. Very, very close to max power. Because otherwise I'll bounce on the top of this, which is heavy rough, or bounce near the bottom of that, or bounce on the hill. Bunch of weird scenarios. So to get like a reliable bounce on the green, I need to be close to max power. Super close. If I actually go max power, I'm not on the green. Very risky. If there's face wind, I don't mind. The face wind is like slowing me down. Here there's no face wind, so I don't have an assist from like being allowed to club up and have the wind slow me down, so that my carry distance is the same as my total distance. So it's kind of risky to shoot from here. Instead, I just go there. Distance is much more predictable. It's not that affected by wind because you shoot low from the rough anyway. And it can be done from this position that I am, which is in the rough. I don't care. I'm just going in the rough as farthest as I'm allowed to be. And yeah, then I just dodge the problem entirely. I think this hole is probably my best example of like what I mean by you want to structure everything for the approach shot. Because normally you wouldn't do this. You wouldn't go in the rough intentionally. But this shot is actually more predictable than going in the fairway. Kind of a blind aim, unfortunately. When you have a blind aim, you kind of aim towards the map. Again, you want... it's not reliable, really, but you kind of want your reticle to be aimed at the center of the total icon, which means right in the middle of that flag. Here the adjustment is about 180 over. I think I can put backspin at this distance. I won't put too much. And that's on the green. It's very hard to have it's very hard to have like a predictable landing zone on this green, so you take what you can. You're in the lighter 9, it's kind of normal. This read is very interesting. I currently am reading that the middle of the hill is slightly left to me. I can't quite show it, but like if I had to aim, I'm kind of like putting the middle of the hill there. Sometimes I do that to actually put myself a reference for where I think the top of the hill is. The hill is. That was so hard. As you can see, my aim is aiming right there, and that's where I think the top of the hill here. Now, if I was to like picture a line from there to the bottom of the hill, I'm not actually parallel to that hill. I don't think so. Because of that, I am going to add a bit of an adjustment for that hill because it's pulling me to the left. Yeah, I think it's pulling me to the left. Slightly. But I also have the grain that's pulling me to the right, almost by 1 unit. So if I was adjusting for the grain, I'd go there. If I was adjusting for the hill, I'd go around there. And the hill is at the beginning of my putt, meaning it probably cancels out. Probably. Just to be safe, I'm going to go 2 over. That way, it probably nullifies both the hill and the grain as much as it can.
I did it!
Perfect. Magnifique.
Player 1 keeps a higher rank.
Hole number 17, 200, 12 yards.
This one's pretty interesting. You're shooting at a hill, meaning currently if I shoot 200, my carry distance doesn't make it to the hill. Yes, you lose some yards on the hill, like we said earlier, like 3 to 5, but carry distance is actually important because depending on how far you're shooting on the hill, the exact distance plus 4 doesn't really work. So at 200 yards, I'm not really making it to the hill. If I am, the top is like a little patch of rough, so I probably still need to overshoot that, meaning I need to club up a lot. I'm gonna go there. Next thing, now, with the angle that I'm going to hit the hill with, I'm still like at the apex of it. I'm like barely going down because I'm going to shoot like so low. Or like it's going to be a less steeper angle than if it was not connecting on top of a hill. This means my ball is going to roll a lot. A whole lot. I'm gonna try and put backspin to stop it from rolling as much as it can, but like this hill here is very prone to just like having your ball over roll by 5 to 6 yards, and even now I have wind that's going to push me even more. So we're going to make like weird reads on this one. We're shooting with a higher club, so we're losing about, I don't know, I want to say 50% of our wind effect. This, little less. This would probably put me on the flag, unless I shoot like super high. But I'm going to go low, because I don't want to get affected too much by that wind, meaning I'm probably going to have to slice myself. Hook myself just a little more. And then I will shoot close to 100% because the wind is still going to push me forward, and backspin is going to have the ball roll. At this distance, at low, on this club at low, it's like going to roll like crazy. It's barely going to stop the ball. You see, that ball still went rolling for like a good 4 or 5 yards. But hey,
Birdie try.
hole 17, beggars can be choosers. This putt's interesting. It's slightly working towards my like unit system in a way. This hill is pulling me to the right. I am not parallel with it. If I was parallel, I would like be aiming right there, right? But I'm not parallel with it, so it's definitely pulling me to the right. However, the green is pulling me to the left, meaning if I had to adjust for the green, I would go there. If I had to adjust for the hill, I think I would go a little harder. Meaning here, I almost aim at the middle. I'll aim about there. And I'll probably go 1 over. This means the ball will probably aim to the right of the cup, and the green will slightly veer it back towards the center. I hope I'm right. Oh, 2 over. That is fine. Normally,
I did it.
you shoot 2 over. If you were already aiming towards the middle of the hill, kind of cancels out a lot of the effects of the hills and the grain. The only downside to that is that if you're not perfectly aimed towards the center, your ball will dip out. But here, I was at least able to demonstrate that like both the hill and grain were working as one unit towards one direction, and those were both opposites, meaning they were effectively canceling each other out. That's pretty predictable, and you have like good references for that as soon as you start considering them as like that's one unit in this in this way, that's one adjustment on the other angle. Cool. Normally, I'd like to have a visible shot at the pin here. It requires a non-max shot from here, or a max shot that connects with the tree on top of that hill. I don't think I'm going to be able to hit that in 11 win. So I'll just play it safe and go right about there. That's close to 2 units. We'll go low anyway. We'll go like way lower just to not be too affected by wind. Here, I just want to make it to the fairway. Safe and clean. Luckily, this hole is kind of set up so that if you look at the power reticle, you're kind of like parallel to that whole line, kinda. So it's generally helping you. And now I have backwind 15. Backwind 15, hell yeah. Let's try the unit system, but you know, that's where it's hard, because win 15, it feels like it's almost like it would be 3.5, 3.7 units, but it feels like it's 5 because it compounds so much instantly. So I'm at 180. I want to lower 1, 2, 3, 4 because that's 4 units. I'll still go extremely low. How do I want to do this? Here I'm going to lower even further. And the reason why I do this is because it'll allow me to shoot a bit higher. And with a lower club, backspin is so strong that I'm hoping I get 10 to 15 yards of backspin here. Hoping. Now, horizontal adjustment. Alright. The tree from here to here, I'll mark as 1 arrow. So from there, that's 1 arrow, meaning now I'm at 2, 3, and I'll probably want to be there. Yeah. Hopefully this wind completely sucks my trajectory towards the hole. So like, if I could go... Oops, wrong one. Map indicator, there you go. If I aim right here, hopefully by this point, the wind is already pulling me there. So, actually, I would have busted out time so hard here. Yeah, I think that's right. Hey, whoa! Oh, that's nowhere near right. Oh, this is completely workable. Look at that. We even had like a reference from earlier. We can make like, we know this tree is roughly 1 unit. That's pretty good. It's 3 units. We'll go there. And we'll go just nice. It's on the green. I don't care. Tutorial over. Go home. Alright, let's use this thing that I described just a second ago. If I point to where I think the top of the hill the top of the hill is, I think I'm parallel to like that, if I was to draw the line, or maybe that, but no, actually, yeah, I'm parallel right there. So, because of that, I'm not parallel here. It's actually pulling me to the left, because here would pull me to the left. Meaning, I need to go about there. Yeah, I'm still aiming at the cup, roughly. Roughly. I have green pushing me, so I can probably shoot normal strength this. Perfect center. So I did align to the left, to the right there.
You have finished the final round.
And yeah, I think that concludes it.